Any luck on the sound? Check 1, 2. All right, can you guys hear me? Give me a 1 in the chat if you can hear me now, finally. Okay, amazing. Stunning and amazing. All right. Wow, that was crazy. I checked every setting on my computer, on StreamYard. It was all routed to my mic. And somehow StreamYard disconnected my mic from the picture. All right. I just want to, now that you can hear me, I want to start saying hi to everybody. Regina G, thank you for your support. Jules Down Under. Yes. All right. It's all good. Ipati, what's up, dude? My handler is here. Philly Special. All right. Let me backtrack here. Alice Faye. Welcome. Welcome in, everybody. Sean Marie. I promise we've got a good one. They can't stop me. I'm not giving up that easily. All right. Let's see. My handler, Philly Special, is going to help me out. I don't know if she was able to get access to mod settings, but Philly Special, let me know how that works out for you if you're able to pin stuff. All right. Lulu, welcome in. 904 Bell, what's up? Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for being patient. And first, before I address the chat any longer, since we're so delayed on my audio stuff, basically, what I want to talk about is, like I usually do, a couple of different things that are connected, in my opinion. For example, I have talked about before the consolidation of power and how key events, which is what one of my intros, which I'll play at the end of the video, addresses. Key events throughout history that have effectively consolidated power. And we've all heard about wealth transfers and things like that. Different key events throughout history have been pivotal in taking power away from citizens. And so I'll just kind of go through some of the basic ones that we're all more or less familiar with. The Federal Reserve Act, the Fed, the creation of the Fed, that centralized power among wealthy elites. Now, the Fed is very mysterious in that nobody really knows it's not very transparent who's involved fully. I'm just going to go through the list first. So the early things, the creation of the Fed in 1913, World War I, and that basically expanded economic powers of the government and created more of a control mechanism on citizens. Taxation changed. The Great Depression and the New Deal that created a lot of the three-letter agencies, right, and pushed power more towards powerful centralized entities and took power away from citizens. Some might say that was created, a manufactured crisis, as it often is. And then when you go further, you have World War II, and basically the US was positioned as a global superpower after World War II. And then you have the creation of the UN and NATO and the Marshall Plan, which essentially created like another centralization of power on a global level. I mean, I'm just gonna go down the list, and then we'll talk more generally about the big picture. So you have everybody knows about 9/11, the Patriot Act, and how that increased domestic surveillance, created a perpetual war state in the Middle East, which some believe was planned for a very long time. The 2008 financial crisis and the whole too big to fail. Right. Alice Faye, I agree. I think that, and I've talked about this many times, a lot of major events. Now, this is the big argument. Are they manufactured, or is it the old saying, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? That's sort of like the mainstream narrative. Oh, they're just taking advantage of a crisis. I tend to believe that many crises are created. So I totally agree with that. I think I'll give you guys, because you guys know I like to go off on tangents. After the 2008 financial crisis, who remembers when they had the Senate hearings with all the big bankers where they say mean words to these people, just like they did with the big tech people and just like they did with big pharma after the COVID stuff? And these bankers were just literally laughing amongst themselves because they know who really controls the government. If you haven't seen that, I'm sure you could easily find it. It says a lot if you look at the way these hearings end up playing out. It's, to me, it's all a dog and pony show. Give the peasants their little pound of flesh, make it look like these people are getting some sort of backlash for the things they have done, yet nothing ever happens to them. That was an eye opener, seeing those hearings. Of course, spring of 2020, we all know what happened there. Now, I want to take a minute to talk about something that I have touched on in the past, but I never really got into, which was my own personal experiences stemming from spring 2020 and the COVID lockdowns and all that stuff that followed. Now, I got sick early, very early on, just literally 5 days before the global lockdowns were initiated. And I remember I was at work. I started feeling off, and I started to get a weird headache, and I never get headaches. So if I get a headache, it's typically something's coming on. And I started to notice something was off, and then I started to develop a fever, a little bit of a fever. So I finished work. This started about halfway through. Now, that was my Friday, and I was going to have the next 3 days off. So I ended up going home, and that night had a fever that lasted for about a day. And it was, definitely not great. It was pretty noticeable fever. I couldn't sleep. And then after that, I started to get like a sore throat. I lost my sense of smell and taste, which is something that a lot of people reported. And so now I've got one more day off, or like a day and a half still, before I had to be back at work. And I reached out to my employer and said, look, I don't know if I've got what's going around, but I'm just giving you a heads up just in case. And they said, all right, well, just get back to us tomorrow and let us know. And I was still feeling off. I was really, really exhausted. I don't know what you guys felt if you had it or not, but one of the things that I encountered was I never got any kind of chest illness. It just was a lot of exhaustion. The fever passed. I still had no good smell or taste. And then basically, right before I was supposed to go back to work, they shut everything down. Here's sort of the crux of what I'm trying to say. For me, I sensed that there was something going on early on. With the way the news was reporting it, the way that within a matter of like 2 to 3 weeks, something that was this mysterious thing suddenly spreads across the whole country in like 3 weeks, less really, from the time they started getting all the fear mongering ramped up to when the lockdown started. Then we all heard about all this suspicious activity in the financial markets and so on. So I was suspicious from day one, and I was pretty vocal about it to people that I was friends with, and people told me you're crazy, and you know I was a conspiracy theorist, and so on and so forth. And as things, I won't get into too much detail on this one thing, but just to wrap it up, I was suspicious, and I sensed something was off. So to people that were close to me, I told them what I thought was really going on, that it was a money and a power grab. And some people agreed with me. Some people thought I was just being paranoid. And then we all know how things played out from there onward. I experienced a lot of sort of shunning from little social groups that I was a part of because I was questioning what was going on. I don't know why. I sensed from day one that something was amiss. I think people have to trust their instincts and not be afraid to speak out. And at the end, I'm going to get into uh, the idea of people not being afraid to speak about controversial ideas because the power structure wants people to be afraid to talk about certain things. And I want to use these examples because I want people to see a lot of times our gut instincts are correct, but it takes a few years before our instincts are validated. And so don't be afraid to speak out about controversial things. And we'll talk more about that at the end. So let's look at these high profile events that happen. They are used always, whether they're created or taken advantage of, to consolidate power. How is power consolidated? Through policies, through consensus building. There are many factions that function as consensus building systems, I guess you could say. The intelligence agencies, the media is utilized for that. You have universities are instrumental in that type of consensus building. Universities hold a lot of people. And if you think about all the universities across the country, big and small, that's, probably millions of people collectively. Now, a concept with power consolidation, you have these large entities, typically the banking, high level banking, central banks, things like that, right? They have immense power. They shape policy decisions. This is globally. The U.S. is just a microcosm. This is all applicable on a global level. So when we have this type of an environment where these powerful institutions can shape not only consensus, but they can also implement policies. And so if you look at the large institutions like universities, corporations, the advertising that takes place on these TV networks and the mainstream media, they're pushing agendas that shape public opinion. Now, one of the things that I mentioned in the title of this stream is capacity building. So I wanted to talk about some general ideas related to capacity building and power structures. I'm going to try to get this. I don't know how well you'll be able to read it, but I'm going to take myself off screen and then I'm going to do a little small presentation to talk about this type of thing. And you can all let me know what you guys think about it. So I don't know. Let me know if you guys can read that okay. Are you guys able to read that stuff on the slides? Let me know in the chat, and if not, I'll make it full screen. So, how major crises reshape power structure. I'm gonna make it full screen here for a minute. Okay, let's see if we can see this pretty well. All right. So crises, wars, economic collapses, terrorist attacks, pandemics trigger rapid policy shifts that concentrate authority and reduce institutional checks on power. All right, so oversight, erosion, emergency measures bypass normal checks, expanding government and institutional authority with minimal accountability. This is part of what consensus building does. And if you can convince citizens that this is for the greater good or this is what has to happen, most people won't speak out. That's a form of social engineering. People don't want to be ousted from the tribe. It's ingrained in our DNA. Elite consolidation. Established elites benefit via new institutions, regulatory expansions, and concentrated economic influence. So I kind of already touched on that. All right, so foundation of centralized power. The Federal Reserve Act. World War I created more expansion for centralized power. And then the Great Depression, they all did this. The New Deal created three-letter agencies, and then interwar coordination. That's basically having to do with the power structure and powers gained through the global influence that we had in the world with NATO, the United Nations, things like that. Most people are aware of all this stuff. All right, so during the end of World War II and then after it, post World War II, the global order shifted. And that's when America became the dominant, very dominant superpower. And so I'm going to make a few callbacks to some things, books and things I've mentioned in the past. Bretton Woods, IMF and World Bank founded dollar-centric financial order. The IMF, International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. Now, some people believe that these types of organizations were really just fronts for elites, for global elites, for the intelligence community. UN and NATO created these alliances that created these global security structures. The Marshall Plan, that was US-led aid, restructures the European economies and deepens geopolitical influence. And then, of course, the US becomes this dominant economic and military superpower. And this is really when global banking, this what I call the global banking cartel, gained immense power. So all right. So I talked about the different things that came from 9/11 and the 2008 crisis. I'm gonna minimize this real quick so I can still see the chat after, and then I'm gonna sort of touch on the capacity building. There's a guy by the name of Michael Benz. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him or not. He had previously worked, I believe, in like cybersecurity uh, f- for the first Trump administration, and he worked for the State Department. And look, some people have raised questions about him, and that's fine. But if somebody is giving us information, even if it's a limited hangout, it's up to us to dig deeper and to question other things. But oftentimes, it's a good starting point to take this information and get what you can from it. And Mike Benz basically, he's he's very, very sharp, very, very sharp. He's been on Joe Rogan a few times. He has his own channel, and he's extremely thorough and extremely sharp, extremely, whether you like him or not. And he talks a lot about the intelligence agencies, capacity building overseas, and I'll talk about what that is, and this sort of censorship industrial complex. Now, what does that have to do with these sort of power structures and key events? Well, when these major events happen throughout history, their institutions are sometimes either made stronger or they're created as a result. Like, for example, after 9/11, you have Department of Homeland Security, right? So these major events, and you've heard me talk about this before, manufacture consent for people to give up their civil liberties and constitutional rights. And what I try to point out, and what I say a lot, is that I'm not like an expert. I'm no PhD in this type of stuff. But you don't have to be an expert. What you really have to be is you have to be awakened to the way the big picture works. We don't need, as I've said before, permission from the government or these so-called experts. We don't need their permission. They all try to marginalize people with differing opinions, and they try to shit on people, like just like with the Idaho 4 case. Anybody with dissenting opinions gets marginalized. This is a tactic. When the media is in lockstep and they're trying to marginalize anybody who questions what's going on, that should be a red flag. We're supposed to be a free country. We're supposed to have freedom of speech. We're supposed to have civil liberties, right? We don't need anybody's permission. And this whole trust the experts thing has been abused. This whole idea. Experts that are foisted upon the public are oftentimes paid shills. And I could, in more specifics, we can talk about this at another time in a different stream, because that's a whole separate topic, how experts are co-opted by the power structure. All right, so we all know about what happened with 9/11 and the financial crisis of 2008. The banks were all bailed out after they crashed the economy. This is wealth transfer. This is power transfer. And the way they do it is it's for the greater good. Oh, we can't let these big banks fall because it'll crash our economy. Just like, oh, you have for one of these two parties, They convince us that we have to be a part of a system, like we have no choice. It's a psyop, that all that stuff. And I'll touch on all this stuff, why it's all connected. All right, so we know what happened with the quote unquote emergency use authorizations and emergency powers expanded. Now, anybody who's offended by certain topics, I encourage you, that probably means you need to open your mind more, because words and topics and ideas shouldn't be offensive to people. We should all be able to look into different things that may go against what we typically believe. It's hard. I understand it's hard to have your ideas challenged, but I think it's something that we all need to try to be okay with. Um, yeah, Phoenix, the 9/11 thing. Let me flash back for a second here. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. What time is it? I spent 15 minutes at least trying to get my sound sorted out. It's 4:45. Plenty of time. Plenty of time. Everybody's going to still have time to get to their other streams, I promise. All right. So, what I want to discuss about 9/11 is that, as I've mentioned before, for anybody who hasn't heard me, I'll repeat it. I lost friends on 9/11. I'm from the New York tri-state area, and so I had a connection to it. Now, I was living in Colorado when it happened, but it was very close to me and my area where I grew up. At first, I was like everybody else. I said, get these terrorists, et cetera, et cetera. And then there were things that happened while I was watching the news broadcasts right after the events on 9/11. Right. I was glued to the TV. I left work and went home right after the towers were hit, because I had family that was working in downtown New York, and my family couldn't get a hold of them because everybody knows all the cell service and all that, phones were shut down. So I don't even know if cell phones were ubiquitous. I don't even think they were widespread at that time, but you couldn't get a hold of anybody by phone that was in New York. So I went home and I was watching news, and I watched as the towers collapsed. And I heard people that were being interviewed as like eyewitnesses and things. And I heard things that made me think about suspicious events happening in the area at the time and right before the first plane hit. People were reporting on certain things to the news people they were calling into the news stations. And then there were a few things I remember hearing that got scrubbed, and you never heard from these people again. One of the big ones was at the Pentagon. Somebody called in. Here, let me try to change this while I talk about this. Sorry, guys, I'm hiding on the screen here. So somebody called in. I was a headless voice for a while there. Somebody called in and said they were driving near the Pentagon and they saw a black helicopter take off in the distance from the other side of the Pentagon from where they were. They were on like one of those overpasses or whatever. And then that was scrubbed. You never heard that report repeated ever again. Then you started hearing about security cameras being confiscated. And then down the road, the information, yeah, right. the news said the second plane hit, yeah, before it did, never to be seen again. There were a lot of things like that. I guess that was my point. Thank you to my handler for raising these questions, um, addressing these topics or whatever, because there are a lot of different things, and I'm sure I'm going to overlook a ton of them. But then there was the alleged plane that hit the Pentagon. We all know how suspicious that was. The wreckage, there was virtually no wreckage there. There were no holes made from the wings. We don't even need to get that detailed about how suspicious 9/11 was. Then I started to ask questions because I'm like, something's not adding up here. Whereas I was all in to the official narrative right after it happened, I started questioning a lot of different things. And then, for example, one of my friend's fathers was on the plane that supposedly went down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And so there was, people that I knew that this was a big deal in my area. But yet there were things that didn't add up with the official story. Many things. And then, of course, documentaries were made about it. And I actually read a book about all the inconsistencies, how fighter jets that would have been in the area were doing operations somewhere else that day, how like it appeared that there were stand down orders and so on and so forth. So we all know the powers that were gained from 9/11. I would argue in modern times, 9/11 and the COVID stuff were two of the biggest consolidation of powers in history. There were many. The creation of the Fed was a massive one that we are still dealing with today. And in my opinion, it's part of what causes so much financial turmoil in the world and the financial issues we're dealing with, inflation and so on. So these events consolidate power and they transfer wealth. Capacity building, which is what I'm going to address right now. Let's talk about that for a minute. Capacity building is something, so we know about the emergency powers that happen in COVID and things like that. And we know about how power is consolidated through crises. So capacity building, let me become a headless voice again. that USAID stands for, here, hold on, let me get my stuff correct here. People think that USAID stands for US aid, like an aid organization. That's not what it stands for. It's basically US Agency for International Development, right? So in the book Confessions of an Economic, and guys in the chat, I'm sorry guys, I'm because I was so delayed getting started, I didn't address the chat as much. I want you guys to give your input on this. You remember all the stuff with the whole Doge audit and all that with Elon Musk and the government, highly controversial. Hey, Lana Lepak, welcome in. Welcome in. Let's see who else is in here. RS Layton, welcome in. I'm sorry I'm screwing up with engaging with you guys. All right, so am I muted again? Guys, let me know if I'm muted again or something. Am I good? I don't know why hold on, let me change my screen here. Is that change it, guys? Can you hear me? Hear my mic? Give me a 1 if you can hear me. Am I back? Okay, good. All right, so you remember all the audits, the Doge stuff. You in the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman, John Perkins straight up says in the book, which is a controversial book to some people, straight up says that USAID is a CIA front company. He talks about the IMF and the World Bank as being front banks to force global power. So if you think about what came out with the Doge audits, whether you, I'm not a fan of anybody in the highest levels of power. So I don't really care about, politics when it comes to that stuff. The reality is that there have been money laundering operations going on around the world that are basically funneling tax dollars away from citizens to these front organizations under the guise of aid. How many times have we all heard that the aid never gets to where it's supposed to and they can't account for it, right? That's something that's extremely common. So you think about these organizations that would be considered part of capacity building around the globe, these like the National Endowment for Democracy, all these institutions that are created to push certain consensus building ideas onto the public. They were pushing censorship. Mike Benz speaks extensively about that, the way that the censorship industrial complex functions around the world. So let's see if I can do this without losing my sound again. I don't know. I'll have to get some inside tips on why that is happening, because I'm not exactly sure why it's doing that. All right. What's up, Lynn Marie? No, I don't think it's a short in the mic because I have an audio interface, potty, and I'm getting a reading on my audio interface from my microphone. All right, so you guys can hear me, right? Okay. All right, so I think people can still hear me. So let's see. I don't even need to read the slides. I can kind of address them. Let's see. Let's see if this will work any better here. Let me know when I change the screen if you guys can still hear me. Am I still good? Me a one if you guys can hear me. In the future, I'll try to have this all I'll troubleshoot what's causing this. Okay, so unaccountable networks, because they're out of sight of the public. Okay. Erosion of sovereignty. If you can manufacture consent for people to have a sort of erosion of their rights, thinking that it's for this greater good, it's for this bigger purpose, many people won't push back. They won't fight it. They'll go along with it because they think, well, I guess this is what we have to do. Self-perpetuating blob. That's basically the blob, the deep state. I look at it as more of a global network. Some people think it's just in America. I think that this unchecked power that often is behind the scenes is how they have influence around the world, and that overrides the sovereignty of citizens in different countries. Obscured oversight. Let's think about that for a second. The World Health Organization. Many people don't know this. Many of you probably do know this. The World Health Organization is not what most people think it is. It's essentially a globalist institution that's controlled by global elites, and governments contribute money to it, but that could be considered, depending how conspiratorial you are, considered money laundering, right? They're basically funneling money from the taxpayers to these institutions, global institutions, without the citizens having any say. The World Health Organization is one. There are many. The UN, NATO, all these organizations, they have powers that can supersede citizens' rights. And this is back in the day when this is what I used to think about when I heard people say, oh, it's the globalists, it's the bankers. I used to think, what do you mean? I don't understand what you're talking about. We have our government and we have our rights and our constitution and our own leaders here. But these institutions have a global reach. And so the big picture about what I'm talking about is we have to start questioning these bigger picture things, as I say all the time, that affect our lives. We have to try to not be afraid of speaking about controversial things that we may fear getting shunned for, because that's what the power structure wants. Because guess what? People start speaking about these controversial things, then they might start realizing that more people feel the same way. And that's a problem for the power structure. All right, so I'm gonna sort of let's get some chat stuff going here. I wanna interact with you guys while we still have time, because my technical difficulties prohibited that in the beginning. But thanks for sticking with me. I really appreciate it. If you ignore bad behavior knowing it is wrong or without question, you are just as much of a part of the bad behavior. You become the enabler of bad behaviors that then expand more. 904 Bell, welcome. Thank you very much for that comment. I agree 100%. And that's why my personality doesn't always sit well with people, because I was raised to stand up for things. And if I feel in my gut that something is wrong, I will stand up for it. And I have. And I've almost faced pretty serious consequences because of it with my employment and social circles. For sure, I did in social circles. I got some of you guys know this about me. I play music on the side. I have for many, many years. And then, the music communities can be, you know, quirky things. And if you are somebody who speaks out against the crowd, it's very easy to get shunned because that is a tribal instinct that people have. They have their little tribes. They don't want to get ousted from their tribe. It's in our DNA. So many people go along with it, as I've talked about in the past. They basically acquiesce to authority, like in the Stanley Milgram experiment, that's real famous from Yale, and in the Ash Line study that demonstrated groupthink, and in the Stanford prison experiment, they turn people against each other. You have to be willing to voice your ideas. Just learn to do it strategically. It's very hard on an emotionally charged subject. But anyway, that is one of the key things I wanted to talk about. And I'm going to have one more topic because I think we all get the gist of what my overarching ideas were for this stream. You have these key points in history that I talk about a lot that consolidated power and wealth. And then you have these little offshoots of the power structure, the intelligence agencies, the banking institutions, universities, corporations, the mainstream media. These are things that facilitate power for the power structure. Yeah, I think, let's see. Well, this is one I'm going to do a whole thing on. Sean Marie, I've that's one of my big causes, and the reason I haven't dove into it yet on a stream or a pre-recorded videos because it's a big topic and it's a very controversial one, but I will in the future. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Um, well, the dancing is Israelis is something that um, I don't know if people know about that. People in the chat, feel free to throw in your thoughts on that. And I'm a little behind too in the chat. Um, so let me touch on the dancing Israelis, and then I will talk about UFOs. All right, let's see. Yeah, there was like a group of Israelis that had this. There were this box truck, and they were watching the events. And after and during and after the events, they were celebrating, and they were Israeli nationals. So that's a whole other deep dive. You can all look into that stuff. There's a lot of different branches of the web when it comes to these major events. That is part of the reason why I am very suspicious about events like the Idaho 4, the Charlie Kirk assassination, the Luigi Mangione case with the killing of the United CEO, Brian Thompson. All right, my handler, she's baiting me. What do you think about the UFOs? Okay. I do not discount the possibility that there are other things out there that perhaps we don't have the technology or the knowledge to be able to explain, but that are utilized and basically weaponized against citizens. Now, I don't know if you've finished the Legacy of Ashes or not, but in that book, they talk about how when the CIA was involved in operations in other countries. Here, let me go full screen here. When the CIA, can you guys hear me? Make sure every time I'm changing screens, I'm getting dinged on my audio. Can you hear me, guys? Give me a one if you can hear me. So, uh, okay. So when the CIA was basically the organization that was overthrowing governments and installing dictators in other countries around the world, what they would do is they would plant media stories in those countries. They would plant propaganda stories in those countries. And one of the ones that they utilized frequently was stories about aliens, UFOs, etc. Now look at America, look at history, look at the times, especially in the last 6 years, when these UAPs, which is the modern version of UFO, popped up in the news and were shoved down everybody's throats. Look at look at the times, what's going on during these times. They use it very strategically. So I don't believe in the whole UFO thing the way that it's being portrayed by the power structure and the mainstream media and the military and people high up in our government, because this is a tactic that's been used forever. Now, that's a whole other episode on what I really believe about it, what I really think it could be. I'll just say one thing for sure. Many of the sightings we've seen over the years are near military bases. They always seem to use it as a distraction. Okay. I don't buy it that the government, why would, if there's these aliens from an advanced civilization far away in another galaxy, they don't need, if they wanted to make contact, they don't need to hide. They have they would theoretically have the capacity. They could can't get in touch and reveal themselves to people wherever and with whomever they want to. So that's a long conversation, but the nutshell is it's not what we're being told it is. And I think a lot of it is being used as propaganda. So I know that's a controversial take, and we will get into it in the future. We can, for sure. Okay. Let's see. I'm just trying to take the temperature. I don't, Lulu, I missed your earlier comment. So I've had issues, by the way, posting comments on videos many times where I was blocked from posting. Literally, it would say this comment cannot be posted at this time, and over and over and over and over again. And when I would be typing out comments that are might be controversial to some, my texting would be hacked. It would be all jumbled, and I would type things and it would type something totally different. Many times this has happened to me. So there's some fuckery going on with that stuff for sure. Yeah, I definitely haven't blocked anybody. That's for sure. Um, yeah, I've had this type of shit happen, but and by the way, we will chat about this stuff in the future. I want to get people's feedback. There's a lot of different stuff we can speak about. All right, so where are we at? All right, we still have time. Let's talk about the bystander effect. I've mentioned it before, and I think I mentioned it either maybe on Birdie's stream or on the Devil's Advocates. By the way, shout out to the Devil's Advocates crew, Birdie Bombshells, and the Custody Queens Off the Clock with Ron. Thanks for your support, guys. I appreciate those guys. Check them out if you don't know them. They make some killer content. And all right, so I've talked about the bystander effect. We know about it. True crime people know about it because of we've heard about it in the past, and it's been talked about on the news how crimes will happen in, say, like New York City, and a group of people will be there and nobody jumps in to help. And the gist of it is people think, oh, somebody else is going to help, especially if it's something really bad. Somebody else will jump in, or I don't want to get involved. Right? This is when there are many people around. With what is happening in the world, I believe that there are things so bad and overwhelming happening that we as citizens are inclined to think, I think maybe this is so bad that there's got to be people in the government or powerful people that are doing something about this. And if you think about it, if enough people believe that and don't get involved, then isn't that a pretty effective thing if the power structure knows that that's how people think? And believe me, they do. They've studied it. All right, let's see what's going on here. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, look, it's what I'm saying is not in this case specifically what I'm speaking about is more related to large scale things that I believe people see and they suspect that something is going down or something really nefarious is happening. Some people, I would argue, think there's no way this could really be planned and nefarious. There's no way. People can't be that evil. I think that's part of it. I think that's one of the things. But I think another scenario for people that maybe see what's going on, they think in their minds, well, this is so crazy. The government or people that have positions of power have to be doing something about this. And I think that's a sort of a expanded version of the bystander effect, because we all have the ability to speak out. Number one, I talked about that, but many are afraid to. So that's just one component of it. And then the whole bystander effect, well, somebody else surely is doing something about it. Somebody else is speaking about it. Now, this is where I tie in things I've talked about in other streams. Controlled opposition is you have these people in positions of power, in media, people in Hollywood, people in high positions of esteem. They may be in the entertainment industry, they may be from universities. Well, hey, welcome in. How does that say? Piner Man one? George Soros is part of that global power structure. He's a financial elite who funds a lot of movements, quote unquote movements. Mike Benz talks a lot about this. These inorganic movements that are funded. So this ties in, this George Soros thing ties in with the whole capacity building thing and NGOs. So that's something we can talk more about that stuff in the future. Bill Gates is another one. They're embedded, these extremely wealthy financial elites are embedded with institutions. Bill Gates with the World Health Organization, with public health. George Soros is involved in all these so-called social movements, right? And that's how they expand influence and accomplish social engineering. So that ties in very well. That's a great question. All right, I agree, Alice Faye. They want this mess. I've talked about this. Create chaos, divide and conquer, distract the public. So you have people afraid to speak out because they get attacked either directly on social media, or the mainstream media just categorizes people speaking out about something as this crazy this or crazy that. Standard technique. And so if people realize that if enough people start to do what they can on their in their everyday life with FOIA requests, public records requests, open information requests, open records requests, depending where you live. If enough people don't even entertain, if people are attacking me for what I think or believe, I don't care. When I was outspoken during the COVID stuff, it did not stop me from speaking out that I was being attacked online. If you know something and you believe it in your gut, you have to speak out. You just have to do it strategically. Well, the lab in China, all right, Lana, I'm going to tell you, this is another controversial theory that I have. And I just wanted to, I'll get to that in a second, Lana. I, so where did Epati's comment go? Yeah, Soros crashed the Bank of England. These are large scale operations. These things that happen on a global level. They have many tentacles. The lab in China, in my opinion, what were the narratives we heard during the COVID stuff? It was a wet market, first official narrative. Then it was the counter official narrative, in my opinion, the lab leak. We'll get into this at a later time because it's a long discussion. And it ties in with another topic that was mentioned earlier. I believe that it was spread. Now, if you guys have seen that I've recommended the book Bitten about the whole Lyme disease thing with proliferation of that in America and controversy surrounding it, it ties in with this whole concept. I believe because the government and powerful entities have a very long and documented history of testing bioweapons on American citizens unwittingly, carrying out experiments on American citizens without their knowledge. That's what I believe happened with COVID. These are just my opinions. This is everything I speak about. It's just my opinions. I'm just talking about ideas, what I believe based on what I know and what I have learned. I can't prove this personally, but when we dive into the whole geoengineering topic, I will give a compelling argument as to why I believe that is the case. They always present you with opposing narratives, just like the right versus the left narrative. And I think those are fake. They're fake choices. I go with my intuition as well. I try to learn a lot about different things and trust my gut. Anybody who does a lot of research and reads a lot and is that pays attention, you are capable of formulating your own opinions. Now, sometimes we may have ideas that we cannot back up with logic. And so I try to not double down too much on ideas I might have if I cannot support them with logic. But we're all capable of thinking and learning things. That's why you guys on the DA stream, someone in the chat, this is quite a while ago, was trying to shut down the discussing potential corruption, and they were like, I'm a state investigator and blah 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 blah, and they were trying to shut down the discussion. That's the worst thing to do with me, because I don't normally, I would give respect to somebody. If anybody tries to shut down people's free speech, I'm not nice anymore, to the point where I lashed out at the person. They went and cried to DA about it. So anybody who throws the I'm an expert, you're not supposed to talk about this, I'm the expert, they can go. I don't buy that crap. I don't trust most experts anyway. Yeah, so who stopped you, Lulu? I mean, you guys know me by now. It's like I'm not, someone could be an expert and I'll respect their expertise in their respective field or whatever it is that they do, but I'm still going to have my opinions. I'm still capable of learning. I'm still capable of analyzing information, and I'm still going to stand up for things. If someone wants to debate me, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But anybody that tries to shut down our discussions, like a certain family in the periphery of the Idaho 4 case, I lose all respect for people that do that. Standard peer-reviewed studies. Okay, so you're talking about COVID, I assume. Okay. Lulu, I can tell you right now. By the way, Lulu, thank you for always supporting me and my ideas. I appreciate you. I have evidence, straight up, not paranoia, that I have been hacked on social media platforms because of voicing. Yeah, Sean Marie. I'm going to get to that in a second. I have been shut down. My keyboard has been hijacked. My posts have been blocked many times. Many times on X, on Facebook, and on YouTube personally. That's happened to me not a few times, many, many times. All right, so this happened to me during COVID. I was literally blocked from posting any links on my Facebook page. Many messages to quote unquote support, no response. I went through all of the settings, I changed nothing. And then we found out later that the government had backdoor access to Facebook and other platforms like Twitter, the whole Twitter files thing. And guess what, guys? During that time, guess who was the head of content moderation at Facebook? And you can all look it up if you think I'm crazy. They were a high level CIA officer. That was who the head of content moderation was at Facebook at the time. But they didn't tell me. That's the thing. They never said, "Oh, you're flagged," or this. They were doing it on the sneak tip. There's my handlers. Let's see. All right. So where are we at on time, guys? What time when do you guys want to end? We could wrap it up in a couple of minutes, or we can go a little bit longer and get some more comments posted on stream. Bertie was potentially going to pop in, but I know he was busy. And with the disastrous results I had with getting some glitches worked out in my chat, it might not have been a great idea to try to bring somebody on stage because I have to sort out why the audio, it's not giving me a message and saying your audio is cut out. It's just cutting out. And I have to find what setting is causing that. I'm sure I could speak with others who are far more skilled with StreamYard and figure it out so it doesn't happen again. Let's see. Of all the people on Devil's Advocates, I'm so glad you've expanded. You're a deep thinker and go out of the box as I do. Thank you. I try. I try to speak my mind freely. It's hard sometimes because if you're in an environment where you have people sharing their opinions and ideas, right? If you don't get a follow-up, right? So if you're having a discussion, right? Let's say I'm speaking about some things and it's everybody in the chat wants to go in another direction. I'm going to have to change gears, right? I'm not going to just keep talking about something that's not engaging the people in the chat. So it was kind of putting me in a tricky situation on Devil's Advocates because I have to say what I believe. And if I believe something about the Idaho 4 case, I can't not talk about what I believe. I have to address it the way that I need to address it. So, this is just the way things go. Everybody has to be able to follow their gut and speak about things the way they want to. I appreciate people that are free thinkers. I think what people need to realize is that we can all do things on the grassroots level, but the the tipping points and the paradigm shifts that happen in society throughout history, there you can see it's a crazy thing. The power structure has taken many years and they have ingrained their power and embedded their power over many, many years. So undoing it is not something that can be, it's probably never going to be done in our lifetime, that's for sure. However, when tipping points happen and awakenings happen throughout history, they spread really fast. They really do. They tend to shift quickly. So if we can have those like spiritual and mental awakenings start to spread in society, they slow down the march towards these nefarious agendas that a lot of the power structure has. It slows them down and it takes their momentum away. And then it gives more time for the awakening to spread among citizens. And it is happening. I've noticed it in a lot of aspects of life. It's the awakening and the paradigm shifts are happening. So don't give up hope. You have to try to don't get hijacked spiritually and mentally because it's very easy to discourage people. Torches and pitchforks. Yeah. Well, public opinion and where you spend your money are today's version of torches and pitchforks. Look at the companies that are perpetuating these nefarious agendas, and maybe you might have to be inconvenienced for a while. Unsubscribe from some of the platforms that are pushing these social engineering agendas. But, it takes awareness of it before you can build up the resistance. And if you know more people are on board with what you believe or they see it too, it does give you a little strength. I've witnessed it in myself. I've seen it in myself. All right. Well, look, I'm going to start wrapping it up because I want everybody to have time to do their thing before the other streams kick off. And guys, I don't know what happened with my sound. You guys have seen me do videos in the past. All my settings were exactly the same. I checked all my computer settings, my StreamYard settings, my mic settings. It was all set up. Should have worked. I wasn't showing being muted on StreamYard. I think it's a glitch. It could be a browser glitch on my end. It could be somebody out there doesn't want my big mouth ideas to get out to the public. Thanks, Potty. I appreciate you, man. Thank you, Phoenix Rising. Look, this is a learning process. Troubleshooting is a real thing. And while I'm not a Luddite when it comes to tech, I'm not as smooth as I will be after more things. So I appreciate all you guys very much. Thank you, everybody. I really think we're gonna thank you, Brandy J. When I can get more fluid with the technical aspects of StreamYard, so I can do it on the fly better, I can get more into detail about things. And some of the things, all right, people have mentioned it. One always asks me about it. Others have. I'm going to leave you guys with a couple of things before I wrap up. I believe that geoengineering is one of the biggest crimes against humanity the world has ever known. It may be hard for a lot of people who may have been invested in a certain narrative or they have a certain way of thinking about the world politically and socially, have been taught to think that this would be a crazy conspiracy theory. It's not. Anybody can look at the universities that have geoengineering programs where they're teaching geoengineering and climate engineering to students, right? So it's not a conspiracy theory. You can go to .gov websites and see the weather modification and the solar radiation management programs they have in place. Colorado is very aggressive. And then that's going to tie into some much bigger pictures when I start to address that more, detailed, more in depth. I can tell you guys, I have spent years looking into this stuff and I live it every day. There is nefarious stuff going on that is related to geoengineering. Potty knows what I'm speaking about. I know there's people in the chat that have mentioned it on other streams, and I just haven't gone that detailed into it because that's like a couple of episodes. So what I'll probably do down the road when I get more fluid on StreamYard lives, I'll probably do some pre-recorded stuff on it, and then I'll do lives where we talk about it, where people can give their feedback on it. I do believe that. Hey, Mary Holt. I believe we are being poisoned. I think it's been done. I mean, we can confirm this. It's been done for many, many years. I mean, I've seen videos of the former CIA director John Brennan talking about geoengineering around the world and how, well, some places aren't going to like it because they may have some negative effects from it. It's been going on for many decades, and there's a lot of way more nefarious aspects to it. Oh, it's guys, it's once you are awakened to it, you can't unsee it. Unfortunately, I live in a place where people don't seem to understand what's really going on, and it's very frustrating because it's like you can't be any more in your face. Yeah, crimes against wildlife, farming, the water supply, to say nothing of what we're breathing in. Look into what's being sprayed. Look into not just the spraying, look into what other mechanisms are being used. Again, what happens when these powerful agendas that have a lot of big power and money invested in them start to be questioned? They release the dogs on everybody and the bots and the shills, and they attack anybody questioning it. Don't even get affected by that stuff. It's all orchestrated. So you have to remember, you don't need to have the approval of experts to do your own research. So look at these key events throughout history and how they have consolidated power. Look at the mechanisms used to establish a political, military, and social order around the world. And that ties in with the whole capacity building. That ties in with the whole propaganda and controlled opposition and social engineering. Look at how people are shunned from discussing these bigger picture things, and look at how the bystander effect may be in play on a global scale, and making people believe that this is so bad, somebody's got to be doing something about this. Again, big picture ideas. And one day down the road, people that may have thought, I don't understand the connection of what this guy is talking about, these different topics, a portion of the people, I hope, will realize, like, oh, wait a minute, I see the method to the madness. I'm confident in this, that you guys will see that. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And the more you learn about it, the more you can understand what's really going on. All right. I'm going to share this personal experience that I have witnessed many, many times, and I have pictures of it. This is not a few times or it happened a couple of times and it can be explained away. This is countless times. Years ago, every time it rained or snowed where I live, I would get a sore throat. I would be sneezing and I would start to feel off. Just like but I never made the connection that it was every time it rained or snowed. It would just start happening, and now you'd think like, all right, I'm coming down with a cold or something, or allergies flaring up or whatever. But it wasn't like typical allergy symptoms. That's before I knew about the the degree of which geoengineering was happening where I lived. So then I started catching on and looking into it and noticing things, and it started to ramp up before, during, and after COVID. And I started researching, and then I started going to .gov websites and seeing that they were spraying and where and what they were spraying. But they would always have a cover story. It's for water table management, cloud seeding, and so on and so forth. Then I started learning about solar radiation management and who was funding it. And then you start looking into what they're spraying and the impacts that it has and other technologies that were being used. And then I started looking into what issues can be caused by these different processes that were being used. I would wash my car this happens so many times, guys. I can't even tell you how many times, countless times. Wash my car, basically park it, or literally drive home 2 miles from on a clear day, no rain. And by the time I would get home, now Colorado, it can be a dusty place, but I've lived here for a long time. This is never used to not happen. I mean, literally go down the street, wash my car, go down the street, park it in my garage so it's not sitting outside, and the car would be covered in a brown dust. Not that even that fine, like very noticeable. When it would rain, my car would be parked. So I'm not driving, it would be parked, covered in these drops of this brown dust. So they're spraying things also in relation to solar radiation management. It's you can look it up. There are people invested in like blocking the sun's rays to try to help with climate change and global warming. I would argue that that's not the reason they're doing it. All right, so we're getting towards the end here, guys. I want to wrap up soon, and for anybody who watches on the replay, I apologize for the audio glitches. I thank you for hanging in there, guys. That would be driving me nuts if I had to deal with that. So I appreciate everybody hanging in there. Yeah, it is out in the open, and I agree. But still, there are people who don't pay attention to what's really going on, right? And so they don't. If more people were aware of what's going on and they knew the effects it was having on them and their children and the environment and the food supply and wildlife and wildfire danger, they would start to take action. All right. Well, look, guys, I gotta wrap it up because I want everybody to be able to get to the other streams. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I'm going to try to get at least one other video out this week, pre-recorded video. And then this next weekend, I'm going to do my best either Friday or Saturday to do another live. And I hopefully will have all these glitches sorted out. So for anybody who joined in late, Gulf Coast Bum, I'm sorry that we're wrapping it up right as you're coming in, but I know there are other streams starting that people want to watch. So I'm going to try to make sure that people can get to their other streams. Thank you, Brandy J. Thank you to everybody again. And I'm going to play us out with a video that's probably, it could end up being a disaster and there's no sound. So at this point, we'll see. Thank you, Alice Faye. I appreciate that. Thank you. I do sincerely appreciate people's support, and I'm only going to get smoother at it as we go. I'm going to try to do at least one live a week, Lulu. One last thing. I need to get some extra income coming in, so I'm going to trying to book more music gigs because I've had 2 months off from gigs because of the off season and all that here where I live, and I need to get some extra cash coming in. So I'm in the process of trying to book a bunch of gigs. So if that happens on weekends when I have gigs, and I'll let people know, I'll know my schedule in advance, and I will try to do like a moving target type of thing with lives. If it's a day, say a Friday or a Saturday, say for example Saturday or Sunday, if I have a gig in the afternoon, maybe I do a morning live, at a time that works for most people. And if I don't have gigs, then I could still do the later in the day lives. So I'm trying. I think I'm I don't know if I got a little notification today about that, and I have to just follow up on it. Um, so yeah, I'll keep you guys posted on what's going on with all that stuff. Yeah, well, Phoenix knows, that I've been playing music for a long time, and she plays music, so we'll get it. We'll work it out, guys. We'll get it going. And also, eh, I'll let people know in advance. Thank you, Regina. Thanks, Lana. You know, we'll I'll keep you guys posted on all that stuff in advance. It's just I had to do it. I had booked some gigs for the summer, and I didn't get on the schedule as much as I had hoped or as much as I normally do because of like new management in places. And then I got an opportunity with another place to get other gigs, and I needed to put it out there to try to do more gigs. So thanks, Lulu. Yeah, I don't even know if I have to go. I think I had to get past 1,000 followers, I think, and I have to set it up. And I think there might be like a delay to set it up. This is how, you know, proficient I am. Turn the heat up. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so guys, feel free to shuffle out and get to your next class. Come on, kids, don't be late for class. The good troll. We like good trolls. I like good trolls. Thanks, good troll. And remember, we're all doing this together. This is Everybody's got to come together. Everybody here is capable of doing research and throwing ideas around. That's the whole idea. I want people to build a community that can say, all right, it's great talking about this stuff online. It's interesting, it's cathartic, but let's go. Let's start doing our part. Let's figure out how we can do things the right way and how we can implement changes. If nothing else, like changing our mind frame and shifting our sort of perception about things, um, and in a spiritual way. All right, keep your sanity. All right, you guys are all too kind. Paisley's posts, I had major audio glitches in the beginning, so I apologize in advance. I tried everything. I couldn't fix the problem. I took a while to get it sorted out, and I'll figure it out what was going on. And I'll keep you guys posted. Like, if I can get the monetization thing sorted out, I'll make sure I post in the community tab of my page. I don't know if you guys check that, but I do post stuff in there. So, that's a place we can chat. Yeah, I want to make sure that I get everything dialed in technically. Thank you, Mary Holt. I'll let you guys know. Like, I don't want to get worried too much about the monetization, as long as, I want people to stay involved and engaged, and that'll happen. I'll get that sorted out, figure it out in the next week. But I'm thankful that you all want to help out. God, man, you guys are throwing down still in the chat. I don't even know. I don't know if that's set up yet. I'm not all dialed in yet on the platform. So I'm going to look into that stuff in the next few days. Thank you. Thanks, Crime Rat. Thanks, Lana. Crime Rat MN. Thank you. Man, I'm sorry, guys, for this stream going off the rails a little bit. and I'm missing comments and stuff, we'll get it dialed in. We're gonna get it. It's gonna be good. I promise you guys. There's more good things coming. Please like and subscribe. I don't even like saying that, but I guess you kind of have to. Share the content, any of the videos you like that you agree with, or even if you think it's on the right track, please share, because I want to build this up. I want to get a network of people together. Like, Birdie has the Hive, and then Devil's Advocates has the Denizens, and then you got Dago with the meatballs, and these other platforms. They have their loyal base, and there's strength in numbers, right? We have to build a community. So that's the plan. Thanks, Alice Faye. Well, I like those other guys, and I know you guys are all part of other communities. Yeah, well, that's good if I'm stuck with you guys, because that's the way it goes in life. Sometimes you just stuck with people. All right, let's see. RS Layton. I'm assuming it's RS Layton. Thank you. And yes, we'll see you soon. Well, thank you guys for the support. I'm going to try to play us out with this video, and you guys let me know if there's no sound. And then if there isn't, I have to take my lumps and accept it. So here we go. Let's do this. See if it'll work.
Throughout history, certain events have shaped our world in ways that go far beyond their immediate impact. November 22nd, 1963. September 11th, 2001. March 2020. Each moment marked not just by tragedy, but by the questions that followed. The Warren Commission, the 9/11 Commission, emergency powers that became permanent. From Dallas to New York to global lockdowns, patterns emerge for those willing to look. The same institutions, the same responses, the same consolidation of power. Recent events continue this trajectory. Butler, Pennsylvania, Manhattan's streets, each incident followed by familiar narratives, familiar solutions. Meanwhile, in boardrooms from Davos to Bilderberg, the world's most powerful gather behind closed doors. Central banks coordinate policy. Intelligence agencies share resources. Global forums set agendas that nations follow. The World Economic Forum speaks of stakeholder capitalism. The Bilderberg Group meets in secrecy. Ancient orders maintain their influence. Some call it conspiracy, others call it coordination. But the connections are there, documented and undeniable. The question isn't whether these networks exist, it's whether we're brave enough to acknowledge their influence on the world we inhabit. The dots are there. We just have to be willing to connect them.